Hey there folks, in this video I want to talk about buying your first drum kit. One of the most common questions I'm asked by students, especially who are new to the drums, well, do I need to buy drums straight away? Being a drum teacher for over 20 years, this is a question that I'm commonly asked. Whenever a student starts lessons with me, especially the younger students, they're itching to buy a drum kit and they come in and they ask straight away, so do I need a drum kit? Right, I need one. I've got to tell my parents to go and spend thousands of dollars. Yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I'll get a nice drum kit. I'll get a red one. Red ones are great. Yeah, I'll get a red drum kit. Oh, sick. Back at it. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You don't need to do any of that. Most of my students are surprised to know that it actually took me 2 years from when I started playing to actually buying a drum kit. So I just made do with what I had. I practiced on phone books at home. I then, used the school stuff whenever I could and, used friends' drums and just tried to practice as much as I could on a real kit, but I didn't let that be an excuse as to not to practice. And at the time, it was a way for me to prove to my parents that I deserved a drum kit. So if I could show them that I was going to practice without a drum kit, when they actually did make that investment, they had more confidence in the fact that, hey, this kid's actually going to use the drums. Now, one thing I want to get off the bat right away. Yes, I'm an endorsed artist, so I endorse DW, Promark, Zildjian, Remo. That's all good and well. I'm not here to push all that stuff onto you. Please don't get me wrong, if you do have the money to burn and you want to go buy some Zildjian cymbals and some DW drums or some PDP drums, go right ahead. I'm not about to stop you. They're beautiful drums and beautiful cymbals and you will not regret it. However, in this video, what I'm going to talk about is a more realistic approach to buying your first drum kit. Now, this is something that I didn't come up with. This is exactly what one of my teachers told me when I was growing up and I was itching to buy a drum kit. Now, hands down, the most important thing to remember with this is that you want to be able to get the best value for money. And the way they put it to me was if I followed this method, I wasn't actually risking a lot, which especially if you don't have a massive budget or maybe your parents are forking out for it and they're a bit, don't know how this is gonna go, this will help alleviate a bit of that stress. Now, the first thing to remember is to buy secondhand if possible. So this is where you're gonna save the most money because going into a store, you may see a drum kit there for $1,000. It looks really nice and it's shiny and it's beautiful, but you buy it. And as soon as you leave that store, that drum kit's gonna be worth $500. That's just the way the secondhand market works. Usually it's half of whatever the original price is. Depending on what it is, obviously there is some variance there, but a good rule of thumb is leave the shop, it's worth half. So suddenly your $1,000 drum kit goes to $500. Now, the fantastic thing about acoustic drums is, especially if you buy a decent drum kit, when you leave, they're not actually going to drop much more or anything than what the secondhand price is. So it doesn't matter if you're the third, fourth owner of that drum kit, that price isn't going to lower. Now let's flip that around and look at a secondhand drum kit. So let's say you're looking at a secondhand drum kit worth $1,000. You take that home, that same drum kit is still worth $1,000. That is provided that you got a good price for the kit, you didn't get ripped off, there's no damage to the kit, you don't have to repair anything. You've bought a good quality secondhand drum kit. So given the rule of halves, if you spent $1,000 secondhand, that means that in the shop, that same drum kit, brand new, would have been worth about $2,000. So me personally, I would always prefer the $2,000 drum kit brand new to the $1,000 drum kit brand new. And like I said earlier, it's not gonna really drop in price. In fact, I've actually had drum kits that I've sold years later that were great kits and were in demand. So I've actually made a little bit more money than when I originally bought it secondhand. Now, I'm not saying that's gonna happen for you, but do your research and look what you're getting. A drum kit can be a really big investment, but if you're very smart with where you place your money, you may not lose any money at all. The same thing goes for cymbals. Usually when you buy a cymbal secondhand, it's usually about half of what the retail price is in the shops, and there's usually nothing wrong with them. These things are made to be hit, and in fact, sometimes cymbals can find, or well, I find, not sometimes, but cymbals can sound better after they've been played in. So your cymbal tone will change and everything. Like this China, for example, when I bought it, it didn't feel like I could really get into it. But from playing it over the years, the more I hit it, the more the cymbal has, it's like the metal has relaxed and stuff like that. So it actually feels a lot better. So your cymbals are gonna feel a lot better when they've been played. So provided there's no damage to the cymbals and they're in very good condition, there is absolutely nothing wrong with buying a second-hand cymbal. Then the next question is, okay, so what should I get? Typically, what I always recommend is a basic 5-piece kit. Now, when we're talking about 5 pieces, we're talking about the pieces of drums. We don't include cymbals there. I've seen people like advertise drums with, I've got a 27-piece drum kit, and you're looking, it's like a 5-piece with a whole bunch of cymbals. And you know, they're counting every little, like the hi-hat is 2 cymbals and stuff like that. No, it's not how it works. When you buy a 5-piece kit, you're talking kick, snare, 2 rack toms, and a floor tom. The sizes, it's much of a muchness. It really depends on what you want. Personally, I recommend getting a 14 by 5-inch snare, a 22-inch kick, a 20 or 22-inch kick, 10, 12, 14, or I prefer 16 if possible. So a 10, 12, 14-inch tom setup is called a fusion setup, and with a 16-inch floor tom instead of a 14 is usually called a Fusion Plus setup. I personally prefer the Fusion Plus just because I like the floor tom to be a little bit fatter, and yeah, I want the floor tom to be really low, but either is gonna work, it's not a problem. What I would recommend you probably wanna stay away from, just on my personal thoughts on this, the rock setup, where it's 12, 13, 16. I've never really understood why you would have 1 inch difference between the 2 toms and then 3 inches between the second tom and the floor tom. It's never made sense to me. But having 10, 12, 14 did make sense. And like I said, having the extra depth on the floor tom from those two makes a lot, to me, it makes it a lot more usable. Having the 10 and 12, at 2 inches between those, personally, it's to me, it's a bigger step, and it's a much nicer dum, dum, dum than the 12, 13, 16. And yeah, I get it, it comes down to tuning and all that stuff, but I feel that a fusion setup is much easier to sell when you do want to upgrade later than a rock setup. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now, in terms of cymbals, I would make sure that you're trying to get at least a set of 14-inch hats. There's lots of different hats out there. There's 15s, 16s, now are all the rage. A good set of 14-inch hats is just gonna be probably the most versatile for you to use, and is gonna fit most musical situations just fine. Then I would recommend having a crash. It's up to you how big you wanna go. This is a 17-inch crash, and then a ride cymbal. Now most rides are around 20. This is a 22-inch K light ride. You don't need anything like this. You just need something nice that feels good for you to hit. Now there's lots of cheap Zildjian packs that you can buy, and if you just want, you don't really care if they sound the best or whatever, and they're not bad for a beginner pack. They're pretty good. There are other options on the market. It just depends on what you want to do and what you want to spend. But again, I would probably err on the side of buying better cymbals secondhand than buying cheaper cymbals brand new, just because I feel that they're going to last you a lot longer, and it makes a lot more sense for me to recommend something that you're not going to hate after 6 months once your ears start to adjust to, you know, playing better gear. Now, when you do buy your drums, this is one thing I would not skimp on, and that is the heads. Now, fortunately, the heads are not stupid expensive, and maybe to reskin your whole kit when you get it, if it doesn't have great heads on it, it might cost you a few $100s. The bass drum skin, for example, would probably cost you around $100, around that mark. I'm not too sure the exact pricing, but you can buy packs from Remo. Remo makes some unbelievable packs where you get a snare head, 2 toms, and a floor tom. And I think they're around $60, $70. So if you were just doing the tops and a bass drum, you're probably looking at about maybe $200. At least change the top heads. It'll make a massive difference on how your new kit feels. And ultimately, it's gonna make you wanna play it more. Like I said, I'm a DW artist, but there are lots of great brands out there for your first time kit. Obviously, look, if you can get a DW, awesome, or a PDP, they're fantastic drum kits. PDP, there are some cheaper ones, and there are some more expensive ones that are fantastic. The main rule of thumb here is to try and stay with the big brands, okay? Because if you stay with the big brands, then you're more likely, even on their cheaper stuff, it's still gonna be fairly good. So you wanna stay with your DW, PDP, Pearl, Tama, Yamaha. They all make great bottom end kits as well. So if you stay with those big brands and stay away from brands like Dolphin, Basics, Powerbeat, Dragon, any of these like cheap Chinese things. The reason is, like, yeah, they're very cheap and they're very attractive to buy straight away, but you're going to have nothing but problems with when you get a cheaper kit. Things that will break, and there will be more things that break on them, such as the lugs, the casings that the tension rods go into. We call those the lugs. On a cheaper kit that I had initially when I first started, they used to break all the time. And that's unfortunately just what you get when you buy a cheaper drum kit. Although the newer, cheaper stuff from the big brand stuff is actually very, very good and very strong and very sturdy. So you tend to not have too much dramas with that stuff. So if you just stick with the big brand names, you should be golden. So just to recap, if you are buying a drum kit, you're gonna lose less money if you buy secondhand, and that money, just think of it as being tied up. So if you do spend about $1,000 to $1,500 on a secondhand kit, even though it sounds like a lot of money, you are gonna get something that sounds great, you're gonna wanna practice on, it feels good, and it's probably not gonna drop that much in price, because it's not like an electronic device like this where you pay $2,000 for it and then 2 years later it's worth like 400 bucks. That's not gonna happen with acoustic drums. If you buy an electric kit, yeah, that's different. That's like buying one of these. So remember, buy an acoustic kit, secondhand, and you can't go wrong. So please note, any figures that I gave you were in Australian dollars. If you want to convert it into US dollars, just cut it in half and that'll roughly give you an idea of what kind of prices I'm talking about. If you do have any questions about any of this stuff, please feel free to comment below and I'm happily answer any of your questions. So if you did like this video, please hit that thumbs up and like and share. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe for more free videos. And if you would like more in-depth learning with myself, please check out my website, intodrums.com. I'll see you guys next week, and until then, happy practicing.